Okay, picture this. Your young, brilliant years of really intense study behind you. And the big one, the work that's meant to launch your academic career, your doctoral thesis, it's finally done.
Right.
Written.
That feeling of completion.
Exactly. Now, imagine that entire world of research, all that intellectual effort, not just, lost in a move, but literally sunk
Mm.
to the bottom of the English Channel by a German U-boat during World War I.
It sounds almost like fiction, doesn't it?
It really does.
But what makes this real and just so compelling is who it happened to and, well, what happened next. We're diving into a specific moment, July 1917, in the life of Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar.
Right. And you, our listener, you're about to hear about an event that honestly could have completely derailed someone, crushed them. But instead,
Yeah.
well, it became this incredible testament to sheer resilience, to intellectual power.
It's hard to overstate the potential impact of something like that.
Yeah, and to really get it, you need to understand where Ambedkar was at that point, in
It's
20s.
right. He wasn't just like dipping his toes into academia. No, not at all. He was absolutely immersed. Think about this. He's simultaneously working on a master's degree at the London School of Economics, the LSE. Okay. He's prepping his PhD for Columbia University back in New York, and he's starting his legal training at Gray's Inn, one of the big historic inns of court in London.
That's just a staggering amount of work. I mean, juggling one of those is huge.
Exactly. 3 major academic and professional tracks at once. And this is happening, remember, during the First World War.
Which adds a whole other layer of difficulty and, frankly, danger, especially with travel.
Absolutely. Travel across the Atlantic, even the English Channel, was incredibly perilous. German U-boats were actively hunting ships. It wasn't like hopping on a ferry today.
No kidding. And this highlights his commitment because he was in London on a scholarship, right? From the princely state of Baroda that was funding his study.
Yes, essential funding. But then, boom, 1917, that financial support gets cut off. Suddenly.
Yeah.
Unexpectedly.
So he's facing this really stark choice. Pack up, go back to India, and potentially just leave all those academic goals hanging in London, unfinished.
That alone is a massive blow. Imagine being that close to major milestones, PhD, master's, bar, and the funding just evaporates. The uncertainty must have been immense.
Huge pressure. And yet, even with this disruption looming, he'd already hit a major milestone. Before having to leave London, he'd actually finished the first draft of his Columbia PhD thesis.
That's right, titled The National Dividend. And by all accounts, this wasn't just a draft. It was a substantial piece of economic scholarship. Years of work.
You have to wonder what was in it, right? Given his later focus on social justice and equality, maybe the national dividend had some early critical ideas about wealth distribution in India or, well, nationally.
It's fascinating to speculate. And it wasn't just the PhD. Remember the LSE Masters? He had a thesis for that in progress, too. Another big chunk of intellectual work nearing completion.
So 2 major theses. And then there were his books, his personal library, his research notes, all the tools of his trade.
Crucial. For a scholar in 1917, those weren't just replaceable items you could reorder online. They were probably full of his handwritten notes, his thoughts, connections, a physical record of his intellectual journey.
Losing that kind of collection alone would be devastating for any academic, let alone the theses.
Absolutely. These books were likely an extension of his mind, really. Marked up, cross-referenced, indispensable.
So, okay, he has to go back to India. He's got this mountain of precious material, his life's work, essentially, up to that point. And he needs to get it transported.
Right. And in 1917, you couldn't just email the files or stick them on a plane. Sea freight was the only real option for that volume of material, despite the risks.
So he makes a decision. He decides to ship the really crucial stuff, the finished PhD draft, the master's work in progress, all those books and notes separately.
He puts them onto a British steamer called the SS Salsette.
And then, for his own journey back to India, he books passage on a different ship, the SS Khaisari Hind.
Which seems like a smart move, right? Don't put all your eggs or your entire academic future in one basket, especially a basket sailing through U-boat territory.
It's exactly a logical precaution given the wartime dangers, spreading the risk.
A logical move, but tragically, logic couldn't predict the specific path of a torpedo. That separation meant as a safeguard.
Yeah. It put his work directly in the line of fire.
So the SS Salsette sails off, carrying Ambedkar's intellectual world, basically. It enters the English Channel, a vital sea lane, but incredibly dangerous during the war.
No one on board knew it was coming.
And then, July 20th, 1917, the German submarine UB-40 is patrolling those waters. It spots the Salset,
Oh, man.
and it launches a torpedo.
Yeah.
No warning.
Just catastrophic. Imagine the sudden chaos on board. The realization.
It was incredibly fast. Within about 45 minutes, the ship went down, sank beneath the waves.
Taking lives with it, too. 15 crew members you mentioned?
Yes. And along with them, Ambedkar's completed PhD thesis, the national dividend, his nearly finished master's thesis, his entire personal library and research notes, years of work, gone instantly.
The finality of that in 1917. It's just chilling. No digital copy, no cloud backup, just vanished into the sea.
It's more than just losing the paper. It's the potential loss of those ideas, maybe ideas that were quite advanced for the time, gone.
So fast forward about a month. August 21st, 1917, Ambedkar arrives back in Bombay. Can you imagine that scene?
Yeah, he's greeted as a returning hero, isn't he, by the Mehar community. They're incredibly proud of this young scholar who'd been achieving so much overseas. He represented hope, progress of them.
Totally. And they have no idea about the disaster that just happened, the intellectual catastrophe just weeks earlier.
That contrast must have been just gut-wrenching for him. The joyous welcome versus the secret, crushing reality of his loss. He's being celebrated, but inside.
He knows his magnum opus is at the bottom of the ocean. And think about the sheer practicality of losing a PhD thesis back then.
Yeah. Right. No Google Scholar, no online university libraries accessible from India easily, no digital notes.
Rewriting it meant starting almost completely over, relying on memory, whatever scattered notes he might have had elsewhere, maybe trying to re-access sources from India, which would have been incredibly difficult and slow.
It's almost impossible for us to truly grasp that challenge today. We take information access so much for granted. Reconstructing something of that scale, that complexity.
You'd think most people would just be utterly demoralized. I mean, who could blame them? Maybe even give up on the whole academic dream. The sheer effort needed to start again. Overwhelming.
Absolutely. It would have been completely understandable to just stop.
And that's what makes Ambedkar's reaction just so extraordinary.
It really is. He didn't give up. He didn't let this unbelievable setback define him or derail him. His response tells you everything about his character.
What do you think drove that? Was it just sheer willpower? Or maybe having written it once, he knew he could do it again?
That's a really interesting thought. Perhaps the intellectual heavy lifting he'd already done, grappling with those ideas for the national dividend, maybe that gave him a kind of internal blueprint, a confidence that the core ideas were still his, even if the manuscript was gone.
Could be.
Yeah.
Because he didn't just passively accept the loss. He made the active choice somehow to go back.
He returned to London, re-engaged with his studies, and against these incredible odds, he successfully rewrote and completed his PhD for Columbia University. Just achieving that is remarkable.
But he didn't stop there, did he? That's the other astonishing part.
Not even close. He then goes on to earn another doctorate, this time from the LSE, his other London institution.
And then finishes the hat trick by completing his legal training at Gray's Inn, becoming a barrister.
It's almost unbelievable, the rate at which he accumulated these high-level qualifications after such a potentially crushing blow. It's like the setback somehow fueled him, kicked him into an even higher gear.
It really seems that way. And we have to remember the context he was operating in beyond just the war and the lost thesis.
Exactly, the context of being a Dalit scholar in that era, facing deeply entrenched social discrimination and inequality in India, barriers that existed long before he went abroad and were waiting for him when he returned.
So he's battling not just academic setbacks and financial hurdles, but systemic social prejudice too. His determination to overcome all of that. He just speaks volumes about his character, his resolve.
Which is why this incident, the sinking of the SS Salset, while dramatic and personally devastating for him at the time, it almost becomes this incredible footnote in the much, much larger story of his life and his achievements, a footnote that highlights his strength rather than defining him by loss.
It's such a powerful illustration that even catastrophic setbacks don't have to be the end of the story.
Right. So think about that, listener. A torpedo aimed, well, not intentionally at his thesis, but aimed at that ship. It destroyed the manuscript, but it utterly failed to sink his ambition, his dreams.
If anything, it seems to have highlighted his resilience, his intellectual firepower.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What things in our own lives feel like insurmountable obstacles, like torpedoes hitting our plans? Could they, maybe unexpectedly, end up being catalysts, pushing us to find strengths we didn't even know we had?
That's a really provocative thought to end on. And especially today, April 14, 2025, as we're marking Ambedkar's 135th birth anniversary, Remembering this specific, almost unbelievable episode from his early life just serves as such a potent reminder. Setbacks, even ones as dramatic as having your life's work sunk by a U-boat, they don't have to dictate the future.
Absolutely. His legacy, thankfully, wasn't lost at the bottom of the English Channel. It went on to shape a nation, and it continues to inspire people right now.